Welcome to the Convergent Impact Leadership Podcast, where we explore real leadership stories and strategies to inspire meaningful action and purpose. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting out, this podcast is here to help you lead with intent, build trust, and strengthen relationships in your organization. I'm Eric Savickas, bringing over 30 years of leadership experience from my time as a retired U.S. Army officer, university instructor, and now currently working as a leadership coach for the fire service. Today, I'm joined by Deputy Chief Michael Cerovski of Lacey Fire District 3 in Washington. Michael's has served in the fire service for over 30 years, beginning his career with the Vail Fire Department before moving to Loveland Fire Rescue Authority here in Colorado, where he held multiple leadership roles, including battalion chief, training captain, and division chief. In 2021, Michael answered a personal and professional calling to move his family to the Pacific Northwest, taking on the Deputy Chief of Administration role at Lacey Fire. He brings a strategic mindset and a deep commitment to developing others, with credentials that include Executive Fire Officer designation, Chief Fire Officer certification, and a master's in organizational leadership. Today, we'll talk about his leadership journey, why he believes in taking risks and seeking discomfort, and how he empowers others through the principle of leader's intent. I'm so excited today to have Michael with us because this is my first guest that's outside of Colorado, but he has clear Colorado roots, and that's how I was connected to you, Michael. So welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to get to talk to you.
Thanks for having me, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here.
So as we talked beforehand, before we started recording, you were telling me about your Colorado journey and how you started at Vail and then you moved to Loveland, where that was predominantly most of your career. And then you moved to become the chief of administration at Lacey Fire there in Washington State. What what prompted that move? What prompted you to leave Colorado after an entire career serving here in the state?
That's a great question. The first thing I'll say is my departure from Colorado and specifically Loveland was actually not at all to do with dissatisfaction or discomfort with where I was. It was about an opportunity. For that, I go back a little bit further. My wife and I married late. Valerie and I had gotten married in 2005. And after a fire academy, where the hours of that academy are sometimes seemingly unending, we had our first just her and I vacation, going and doing something crazy. So we flew to Portland. We ended up on the coast and visited her father in Brookings, Oregon. We traveled all the way up into Victoria and Vancouver. And then we came down to Seattle and through Olympia. And I remember distinctly on a ferry boat on our way to the Canadian side of the sound, looking at her, and we both had the same kind of thought in our head, which is maybe someday we would retire out here. We both love the trees. We love the fern-like appearance. This would be a great place to be. And just envisioning seeing whales someday. So then we fast forward to 2021, and this opportunity comes up in Lacey. And again, one of those conversations, I've always made a decision with my wife. Uh, you got to try this out. You got to see. And it was really a crucible moment, right? Because one more year, or not even that much, maybe 6 months, my oldest son goes into high school, and we made a deal that we weren't going to move once he entered that space. And because we have three boys, it's quiet in our house. We knew that there would be a cascade. So once Connor started, then he would finish, then Quentin would already be in high school. So it was really the last throw of an opportunity to do something extraordinary and take this move. I would say professionally, and again, I will go through this in this interview. I think that, or I believe that the things that we do personally inform us into the things that we do professionally and vice versa. So professionally, I have always been kind of fascinated by and appreciative of the concept of a labor workforce that's healthy and engaged in the organization. And by that, very simply, I mean that there's a CBA in place, a collective bargaining agreement. Now, some may want to throw a rock at me, but I think that in a healthy environment, that can be the best of all worlds, where there's an engaged workforce that has a stake at the table, whatever that stake might be related to, and there's accountability for both sides because there's an agreement that's in place. But that's not necessarily an easy space to navigate. And so I wanted to experience that. And I know that in Washington State, among a few other states, there's a strong element of that in the culture of the fire service in Washington. And so professionally, that was an opportunity to seek out, but albeit a risky one, right? I didn't really know what I didn't know. Coming here could have had a dramatically different result that would have left me looking for work. Thank goodness, knock on wood, that hasn't happened.
So it's definitely a beautiful area up there. I've only been there once. I had to do a summer teaching some cadets for the summer program at Fort Lewis or Joint Base Lewis McChord up there, and I spent most of my time in Tacoma and North. Lacey is south of Fort Lewis, isn't it?
Yeah, south of, but the southern border of JBLM actually covers our area in a few spots, along with Nisqually Indian tribe.
Okay.
Their reservation is here, land is here, their home is here, and so yeah, we actually have professionals on the fire floor that are tree experts and climb trees to rescue paratroopers that have a bad day. I
There
cannot
you go.
imagine what that must be like, but I'm glad we're trained to help them out if they have a need.
A close friend of mine retired to, I want to say it's Stellacune. If does that sound right? Is that near you?
Stilcombe, yeah, it's about a half an hour, and I
Okay.
would equate that to in the Fort Carson world, the lovely area. There's a hotel, and it's slipping my mind right now. I would know it.
Broadmoor. Broadmoor,
Yeah, the
maybe?
Broadmoor. So that
Okay.
area, same kind of concept, only right on the shore of the Sound, and just beautiful, beautiful homes and beautiful landscape.
Yeah, he sends pictures of pods of orca
Hmm.
whales, I believe, out
Yeah.
there in the water. But anyways, so you're here in Colorado, you're at Loveland, you're doing great work there. You're being successful, if you mind me saying. And then I'm curious, right? Because you and I have talked about discomfort and intentionality and risk and stuff. Were you the type of person that embraced that throughout your career and that was embedded within you? Or was this equally, just like it was for your family and your boys, was it equally an exercise in embracing discomfort and risk and uncertainty for you? And you had to live through that so you could model that way for your
I think all of the above. When I was 20, I discovered that I had cancer. And prior to that time, I think that I don't know. I think that was a crucible moment, right? Like, I don't know if I really had a good plan for what my life was going to be like. I was kind of piddling around in school, and I don't know that I had a passion for school. I wasn't necessarily thriving. And I think going back to my early childhood, I'd always thought being a firefighter would be cool, but I never thought that I would be able to achieve that, quite honestly. Too little, too small, all those things, not in the cards for me genetically and all those things. I wasn't necessarily a team sports player, but I was fascinated by that in the fire service. It's a very much so occupationally athletic, and that team environment is critically valuable to me. So I get cancer. I decide, no, I am not going to let that take me. But in exchange for that, I have a responsibility, and that's to make my life have value and meaning. So from the gate, I remember experiences where people would say to me, "You're too little. You shouldn't be here. You don't have what it takes." And quite honestly, I'll meter what I would say normally by saying that just made me more angry. You can figure out what I would have said instead.
Mhm.
I'm going to prove them wrong because I have a mandate on my life that I've given to myself. So from that perspective, yeah, that's risky, right? You're putting it all on the line. And then I would say, as I've gone further in my career, the opportunities I've had have been asking me to think about other things than just what I wanted. So I wanted to see those other experiences. And then as I become a father and see them grow, and then get ready for the prospect, looking back in 2021, in 2020, we weren't dealing with the idea of my kid going off to college. Although this last weekend, I just took my son to the University of Idaho, but thinking about how am I going to prepare these guys for success? Because if they've always been in a safe place, how do they know how to reach out and do something that they've never done before? How are they going to feel confident with that? So then it falls, the leadership model says that's on you, right? What are you going to do to lead that? And so this was as much about leading them through discomfort as it was demonstrating that for myself as a fire service professional, as a leader, and as a father.
So just about the cancer for a second, completely grateful and thankful that you've overcome that and you are where you are today and you're with us. With that, in entering upon the fire service, do they look at that and they say, Michael, you've already had this bout with cancer and we're in unfortunately, a higher risk for cancer industry. this probably isn't a good fit for you. You should probably find employment elsewhere? Or does that not matter as much because that was part of your past and you can, have a fulfilling career with that behind you?
Yeah, I don't think. Well, first of all, you're going to test my brain. I don't know that in 1994 and then again in 1997 when I did my pre-entry hiring with Loveland, I don't know that that was even a discussion question. It was certainly in my, in my medical bio. But following that, hey, I had testicular cancer. I had one removal and I had 6 weeks of radiation therapy, and I've been cancer free for 5 years. That's as far as it went. And I think that every cancer doctor, for any of the listeners, will say the same thing. Their doctor told them, yeah, you are a cancer survivor, but you will always be a cancer patient, right? So
Mhm.
that was something that they told me, at least in 1992. And I get scans every year. I'm an advocate of my own medical care by being brave and getting the physical done every year. Not everybody wants to do that. I go over on the fire floor and tell the young, amazing, healthy firefighters that are 22 or 23 years old, just because you're healthy and you don't need a doctor doesn't mean you shouldn't see one. Pay attention to what's going on in your body because we don't know what's going to happen. So it informed me on how to lead, be maybe learning how to be an advocate of yourself, but it never prevented me, and it certainly was not a barrier for me to be employed. And in my role now, I've never encountered across my desk, hey, this person's a great candidate, but they had this in
Mhm.
their medical history, so we probably shouldn't hire them. That just hasn't come up.
Well, that's good, and that's obviously a more enlightened and appropriate stance. I was smiling because the advice I got from my dad when I was joining the army was never admit anything.
Yeah.
And, and then I was telling my wife this the other day. Throughout my career, back when we had paper hard copy medical records,
Uh-huh.
in between assignments, they would give us those medical records and we'd hand carry them to the next duty station. And I would go through my medical records and I would tear pages out of them and throw them in the trash because I never wanted anything to be a discriminator for future promotion. But then I retire and I go to the VA to try to get, my VA claim and disability. And I have a very thin file with nothing proved. And so it was a double-edged sword, I guess.
For sure.
So you had been and served in nearly every division that the fire service has in different departments, from fire prevention to training to administration now. That coupled with your big move from Colorado and existing and understanding the fire service in Colorado to Washington State, how has all of that affected your leadership style?
So I think that just like your personal life informs your professional life and vice versa, I don't, in my humble opinion, I hope this doesn't offend, I don't think you can say you're a leader and a transformational one at that without being able to look at yourself and go, what am I doing selflessly for the team? And I get it. Like I look at the staff over here on the operations side, and the adage over here in Lacey is they are sitting in a tub of butter, which is to say they got it good, right?
Mhm.
Everything is great, and there's no wants or needs. They are well taken care of. They respond and train and do all the things that make the operation side successful. Why would you want to leave that? But I can tell you that when I was an engineer and this thing comes up for fire prevention, and at that time the administration said, we're going to make everyone interview for this, even though nobody wanted to do it. And there was a lot of fear associated with it. What if the chief leaves and a new chief shows up and says, wherever you're at, you're staying? There was lots of scary things. And I don't know what it was, but I finally said to myself, well, this is definitely a promotional opportunity I'll win. Nobody else wants it. And what can I get out of it that's valuable? What can I do to serve? And I'm not going to let this be a barrier to me going back to the street. And so I did that. And my gosh, I got a staff vehicle because we were understaffed. I got to go to every major fire in the system, day or night, weekend or weekday. I actually fought a lot of fire when I was in that role. I got to investigate a ton of fires and learn a lot about fire behavior and what fire does. That informed me as a leader and what to see and what to use as a tactician down the road. I got to interact with the general public and build relationships and learn how to be effective talking to people that are going to be our voters that decide whether we get a mill increase or what have you, an increase in our taxes. That's a thing, right? You got to recognize your audience because that's the hand that's feeding us, right? And I'm not doing it maliciously, but making sure it's intentional. Training was probably the most rewarding experience I had in my entire career. It was a lot of dang work. It was hard on the family life because it was constant. It never stopped. But I got to have a hand in the helpful development of so many people that were brand new to the organization, and not just with Loveland, but we were a consortium fire academy. So I got to know there's people that I see get promoted in the Poudre Fire Authority or Longmont Fire or Greeley Fire. I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember that individual when they were brand new. And I am sure many people were involved in their development, but I got to be a part of that. That's really cool. And then the last one was administration. I remember after I've been a battalion chief for 8 years, loved that job, had some amazing experiences with some amazing people. But I remember laying in bed at 2 in the morning, and it was like the second day in a row where I wasn't getting up. And I felt like I was taking advantage. What am I doing to contribute in a positive way to this organization? And I think that another element of that leadership style, when you take that leap and you take on a new challenge, you're challenging yourself, right? You're stepping out of your comfort zone. You're seeking discomfort intentionally, but you're doing it intentionally. It's a win, right? It's not being forced. It's something you're choosing to do. But what am I doing for the people that are now going to have an opportunity because of my change, right? So, for example, in administration, the person that I replaced was not a shift person, not a member of the sworn workforce. So my departure from the shift allowed for a promotion to battalion chief, for captain, for lieutenant, for fire engineer, and for firefighter. When I left Loveland and came here, the same thing happened. But that's not bragging, right? That's succession investment. And I think it's valuable to say I had a part in that. And I think it's true to what I believe as a leader, that my focus is not that I have the rank, so kiss the ring. It's that I have the opportunity to serve the people that work for me or work for this organization.
Mhm.
And I think that is more important than the ascension. It's a weird juxtaposition, right? As you go up in rank, your service demand is higher. Now maybe your influence is different because it's more broad, and the company officer has a more specific group of people that they're leading. And thank goodness for that. I think our company officers are our most influential people in leadership roles in the fire service. But they also need someone that's caring and feeding for them as well, and making sure they have the tools to be successful, whether it be as the ops chief or as the administration chief. Those are essential roles for that continuum.
So, speaking of care and feeding, and maybe that might be in your answer here, if you and I were sitting in a bar together and you would quickly realize that I have zero fire experience and my knowledge is is limited, but I might ask you, "Hey, Michael, what exactly does a deputy chief of administration do?" What would your answer be?
I tease, especially if there's other firefighters in the room, I say, I do all the things that all of those people in operations wish they could do. And then we all laugh, and they know that I have a sense of humor because I know that that's not exactly true. But it's the back end work. It's all of the work of preparation for a process for hiring people. It's the insurance elements. It's the legal ramifications for buying a piece of property or dealing with a contractor or addressing, God forbid, a disciplinary process that's going to have a very dramatic outcome. It's making sure that we're compliant with our third party people. So ISO and insurance service rating, fire protection classifications for communities. It's making sure that our logistics team has an effective budget to be prepared for, we have to rehydro a bunch of cylinders. All of those things make this place move. And I would say the other serious one is the only reason that we exist in the administrative side of the organization is for the bell to ring and for us to respond. So if we think about this process as a game, the win is when the truck leaves the bay and goes to serve Grandma Cerovski, right? Or that person that lives at the corner of Walk and Don't Walk. They have to have the the con uh the confidence that we're going to be there. We're going to be there efficiently. We're going to be there professionally, and we're going to take care of whatever the problem is, whether it's cat in the tree or their house is on fire. I say the cat in the tree part because it really doesn't matter what it is. It's that we're going to be there and we're going to take care of it.
Mhm.
But if we don't have someone paying for the light bill or the gas bill or buy that fire truck 4 years in advance so we get one before the other one dies, none of that happens. So that is essentially what I do. And I miss the floor. I'm not going to lie. I miss being on a fire truck. I miss uh, the cab conversation or the conversation at the coffee table. That camaraderie, that occupational athletic sport that we have, you have to separate yourself from that when you do this because I can't be in two places. I have to focus on this.
So would you say it is the care and feeding like I maybe suggested, even though it's not the same care and feeding that a company officer would do for his or her crew or a battalion chief for their battalion, but tangentially maybe or
Yeah.
numerous levels removed, if you don't do what you do and all the people that pull those levers that do that associated work don't do what they do, the care and feeding doesn't happen.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's totally true. I'll fall back on an old thought about tactics. That nozzle firefighter, their span of control is about what, 4 to 6 feet. That company officer that's parked right behind them and giving them guidance and using the tick, their span of control is 15 to 20 feet. That division supervisor is maybe 30 feet or that whole floor. That incident commander is the whole building or 500 feet. The division chief of operations is a little bit bigger than, and so is the deputy chief of administration. We're flying at a much higher space and our viewfinder is much larger. And because it's so much larger, we have to plan a lot more to make sure that those things come in on time. So absolutely care and feeding. And it's just another spoke on the wheel. It's another factor, it's another layer of leadership. It's probably more about things than it is people, but no less important.
So I want to shift a little bit here, Michael, and I want to talk about leaders' intent with you. It's the subject that I'm talking about this month, and a couple weeks ago, I talked to Brad White at Grandfire about it a little bit when I had the privilege of having him on the podcast. Frequently, when I talk about leaders' intent, I talk about it as being a really powerful tool that I was taught in the military, where you can let someone know the expectations of a task or a requirement or a mission in a way that empowers them to not only understand the why, but understand what we're trying to achieve by doing the thing. And then they, coupled with those two things, can take their initiative to come up with creative solutions or the solution, the appropriate solution, and do it according to their expertise that they have in that area. It would seem to me, as I'm thinking about this and hearing you talk about administration, that leaders' intent might be even more critical because you're doing a lot of things that maybe don't have dots connected as clearly as maybe putting water on fire, right? And I don't, I'm not certainly not trying to downplay the importance of putting water on fire, but if you tell a firefighter, grab the pre-connect and then, put water here, and again, I'm bumping up against my knowledge base here,
Mhm.
they can get that very easily. You don't have to go into the purpose or the why and describe what that, they see it. How do you exercise leaders in intent in a way that informs not only the people that work directly with you doing some of those administrative type things, but maybe just the firefighter in the department to kind of say, I get it now?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the fire service, I think about leaders' intent. I think about task, objective, timeline, resources, those basic ingredients. If you have those things at a micro level, you can really pretty much solve it. Like put that fire out, contain that hazmat leak, what have you. I think what I maybe as a metaphor is if we had to first turn on the water line that allows water to come out of the hydrant. So you spin the nut on that hydrant, nothing comes out because they didn't get notified. That's the kind of complexity that I feel like exists in this side of the house.
Mhm.
If the drains for the street drain are blocked, they have a valve on them, and we don't let them know that we got a fire, we're going to have some drainage, and think the street's going to fill up with water. And I feel like that's maybe a great example of what we face. I think there's so many things that requires so much information and planning because, for example, if we hire 4 firefighters we have 4 laterals that we're hiring in the next month. You know what it takes to get gear. My logistics team, they can't get gear fast enough, right? So what they got to do is have a cache of extra gear in varying sizes to probably cover the gap. And then as soon as we know they're going to hire them, They've passed all that prereq stuff. We get them sized, but that's not going to show up for 4 months. So it's about developing timelines that can protract for everything you can think of. And I feel like my role as a leader with the people in these positions in administration, my time with them is as critical, if not more critical, because we have to have these conversations and they happen so fast that it can be really easy for a team member to be like, hey, I never heard, what it is with when is that aid unit arriving? We got to start outfitting it. Oh, it's coming in 2 weeks. And there's just so much information that comes in on this side of the house that it's really easy to slip up and not make sure that everyone meets. So what I do a lot, one of the first thing I started when I got here was I saw a lot of disconnect in that people just lacked information. So I said, let's start with something simple. Let's build some meeting schedules. And meetings are dangerous, right? They're essential and they're also time
Sure.
consuming. But if we have a weekly huddle with every division and we rely on our leaders in each of those divisions, in 30 minutes we can have the really easy nuts and bolts of that week. If we meet monthly as leaders, and let them meet monthly with their teams, we can take care of that month time span. And then the whole group of us in administration, there's 17 or 18 of us now, we meet quarterly. And the intent behind that is that every single member of the organization, regardless of their rank, a chance to have a seat at the table and speak to whatever their role is or whatever their question might be. Maybe it's policy, maybe it's the plan of the future. And then one of the things I really appreciate about our chief, Jennifer Schmidt, when she was my counterpart, when she was the deputy of operations, we talked about developing sort of a play card, a big poster, and by quarter, these are the major initiatives that we're focusing on. It's only the big stuff. It's not the day-to-day operations, but it's another element of communication. And I would say that is all anchored off of healthy, constant communication,
Right.
and also being willing to say, what can we do better? As much as we talk, we still don't talk enough. And so I always try to make myself available so that people could talk about what they need to hear more about.
And I appreciate you saying that because too often we talk ourselves out of sharing more information because we just say, well, to that person, for them to do their job, they don't necessarily need to know this. They don't need to know what's going on in the current collective bargaining agreement, or they don't need to know what's going on big picture behind the scenes of the contract to build this new station or whatever. And we talk ourselves out of that. But one of the principles of military mission command, which feeds the whole concept of leader's intent, is shared understanding. I don't think there's ever been a situation where providing somebody more information about the bigger picture was a detriment.
Right.
I think them being armed with understanding what's going on with the leadership and with the organization or the department and bigger picture stuff allows them to do their jobs better. So I think it's great that you talk about that, and I think it's definitely powerful. One other thing that I think you probably do that I talk about a lot when we talk about giving people the why or the purpose behind something isn't just the immediate purpose where we say, here's why we're doing the thing. Let's say the task is to drive an engine by some kid's house for his birthday, right? The immediate purpose there could easily be we're going to drive by his house so he gets excited and it's the best birthday ever, right? But I tell people that we have to get used to giving the why at two levels. The immediate level of driving by the kid's house so he gets excited, but the bigger picture why might be, well, that strengthens community engagement and relationships and builds deeper trust in the community, which is all good for what we do here in our role as a fire department for the community. So I am sure you probably incorporate some of that as well.
It's critical. If you think in Lacey, we run about 18,000 calls a year, and for a population that's about 100 and I think 108,000 people across 70 square miles. Now, if you want to really dive into that number, that means that, and some of those numbers, some of those calls are repeats, people that we see a lot, or a facility a lot, like a fire alarm, et cetera. I think what that means to me is our impact in the operational side, while very important for those very bad days, nobody calls us because they did something right.
Mhm.
That's a fraction of our total population and therefore our total impact. So when we start looking at those moments for that kiddo's birthday party or that national night out, which we just had last night, those are opportunities proactively. to help close that gap just a little bit. And then, of course, we've invested in a special position in administration that's our multimedia specialist, where we market that. And I've said that for years. If you ask my buddies in Loveland, we don't market ourselves well in the fire service. We need to do a better job of that. But that's a difficult thing. It's about having the right person to interpret and spill the lingo that speaks to the population that we have about what's going on and what we're doing. I also wanted to comment that it's important to have in leaders' intent, have leadership that not only is transparently speaking to everyone about everything that's going on, but when we have people that may stray away from what their core role is, to help guide them back, help coach them back. Because sometimes the things they're doing are task important, but they're not as cool as that thing right over there. And we need to remember that everybody has a piece in that, no different than a sports team, right? And so the risk of everybody knowing what's going on is that it can cause some deviation. And that's where leadership comes in, of people helping them, and then also recognizing the succession that individual needs so they can grow and maybe seek that opportunity that is over there,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I was gonna say, just to piggyback on that a little bit, guide them back like you just said, but do it in a way that doesn't break their spirit, right? Like it sucks to be told, "Hey, stay in your lane, know your role, you're just a firefighter or you're just an engineer," right? Like, how is anyone going to get deeper exposure to what it might be like to be a company officer in the future, or maybe subsequently to be a battalion chief or a division chief at some point in their career, if they don't ask questions and pursue things that maybe look like those future roles. So if you get smacked down and say, no, stay in your role, you're just an entry level firefighter and that's what you need to be right now. Sure, I get that there's some honesty to that, but also you gotta do it in a way that doesn't destroy that person.
Well, and you said something that I wanted to capitalize on. That You're absolutely right. But what I'll say is, what you just said is something that we can all fall in trap of in the fire service, in that we only think about the succession development of the sworn member of the team. And granted, they are the larger body of our work, right? 139 firefighters on the fire floor across 4 shifts. We're running about 30 strong per shift, and then we have people in other positions. But I got 18 people that are administrators. They're IT specialists, they're payroll specialists, they're procurement people. They do payroll processing. They're specializing in HR, or they're doing support services missions, which are that mission of serving after the fire. Let's talk about the hyperutilization of 911. Let's talk about, you need health and wellness support from your family, and it's not available, so we need to get you into the system so you can get state services. All of those people have desires and aspirations no different than firefighter Mike or Bob or Joe, right? In the fire service, and probably, I'm guessing, the military, there's a very prescriptive model for going from E1 to E5. And you know these ranks better than I do, from the ranks all the way up to the top. Everybody probably has an aspiration in some level, right? Or maybe a specialty in some element of a team. But how do I, a sworn firefighter that's been doing this for 30 years, speak to and connect with that person that is an amazing IT specialist and help them find their dream of going to the next level? How do I find that IT manager that needs to promote or wants to promote to that next level, director? How do I inspire somebody that's in HR that wants to have more responsibility and opportunity? That's what I love about this challenge in the role that I'm in, is it's expanded my mind to think differently about leadership. It's not just about leading the firefighters, it's about leading this organization. And we say we're a family, and I believe that here in Lacey. Those people over there, they love the people over here, and vice versa. But that only stays that way. That only stays healthy if we continue to um, to develop those people and invest in them.
Sure, sure. So you've had a fairly long career already. You've seen a lot of change throughout the 3 decades in the fire service. What excites you about the future? What are you seeing on the horizon, either at Lacey Fire or the broader fire service, that you're like, wow, that is really great and that's awesome, and I hope that changes things for the better, or whatever it is. What do you see out there that is exciting?
I think that we're a more diverse fire service workforce. I think we're doing pretty good here in Lacey. We have still work to do, but we have a more diverse workforce than I think we've had in quite so many organizations as a comparison. And I think that that offers tactical advantage to the people that we serve. And if you do any study, what they say is that communities service elements have to be a reflection of the community, right? And that's an inspiring thing for young people that want opportunity that may not have it. That's not a bad thing. I think sometimes it can get maligned that way, but it's not a bad thing. The other thing I'm really excited about is the way we're leveraging and being comfortable with technology.
Hmm.
I've had this conversation with a couple of buddies in Colorado and Wyoming, and we used to kind of brag hard on these young people don't know how to work. Well, do they not know how to work, or do we just not have a connection with them and what their specialties are? There is some incredible, talented people that know how to work, A, and B, have a pulse on leveraging technology and some of the features that we can take advantage of that are becoming available that I don't have necessarily the best skill set with. And so that's another element of diversity, right? And it's
Yeah.
not in the traditional sense, it's that we are all part of this garden and we're growing and we're invested in each other and exploring new things and challenging ourselves. So I would say those are some things that I think are important. I think we're also doing a good job of paying more attention to things like mental health, cancer prevention, healthier workforce efforts. So there's less people that chew as a regular course of their day. How can you say you're cancer preventative and then say that that's okay, right? Like we have
Hmm.
to think about holistically what are we doing to be better, and I think we're figuring that out. So yeah, those are some exciting things that I see happening in
Sure.
fire service.
I like what you said about the diverse workforce and how that's a tactical advantage. I think nowadays, and this certainly isn't a political discussion, but we get hung up on the terminology of things. But I saw a video, and it was an interview, and I forget the gentleman's name that was interviewing, but he said, we should look at this like the X-Men. If our team was the X-Men, and you had somebody like Wolverine that does great at cutting and slashing with his claws, if you said, "No, no, no, Wolverine, we're a kicking and punching organization. Sorry, there's no place for you here," you would be obviously limiting that the ability of that organization to do great work. But if you said, "Wait a second, this person over here kicks and punches really well, but Wolverine cuts and slashes. Maybe combined, we become the power of the X-Men." And that's, I think, the better analogy to thinking about the diverse workforce and simply checking boxes and doing, getting hung up about terminology. And I think you put it really well about how it's a tactical advantage.
It's absolutely a force multiplier. I'd say there's one other thing I want to brag about here, and I don't think this is a fire service thing, but I would love it to be. I think that the labor relationship that we have with our local leadership and our management. So I'm part of management, and there's these four individuals and a couple of union stewards that are representative of local for Lacey. We have a phenomenal relationship, and we have conflict. We disagree, but we advocate for the common objective of getting us to win. Right? We focus on the best service with excellence. That's our mission, and they are just as invested in that as we are. And I have not seen something quite like that in a labor actually
Hmm.
ever, because I'm new to the world of labor environments, but that's phenomenal.
Hmm.
And for those out, I've seen it, I've heard it, I've read it, and shame on us for knocking the other one down. That's not productive. That's not effective. I'll go toe to toe with anybody that says well, this is why I think this is right. It's not. We should be doing a better job. We should be leaders in both sides of that camp to better the relationship for the common good. It isn't about us. I've said this before. What I do, whether it's on the fire floor or in administration, it's not about me. It's about the people we serve when they call 911. And the second we forget that, then we've lost. So I think that's important. I know that's very localized, but I think it's worth hearing and worth discussing.
No, good. And I appreciate you mentioning that. One more question for you, Michael, as we wrap it up here. You've spoken in depth about a lot of the positive things that you're doing at Lacey or that Lacey Fire has going on beyond just you. You've talked about the fire service in general and the things that you see on the horizon that are positives, not necessarily a negative, but what's one thing that you wish we talked about more in the fire service? Whether it be a leadership topic or maybe just any topic, what's something that's lacking?
So, as you have said, I think I'm closer to the end of my career than I am the beginning, right? I still got a ways to go. I got to get my youngest to college, and there's going to come a point where I've said this before. I kind of dig my wife. She's pretty awesome. I love her, and I want to spend time with her. And what makes me sad is that in the fire service, there's this little statistic that talks about how many people survive past 2 or 3 years of their fire service retirement. What a tragedy. And so I thought about that for this question, and I thought about the word succession. And I think the root word, if I was to try to be Greek, is succeed. How do we succeed? And so we're really good at hiring people. We're really focused on recruitment. We talk about diversity. We want to make sure there's fantastic academies and they're welcomed and feel great. We want to invest in truck academies and officer academies. We want them to promote. We want them to achieve battalion chief. A lot of union people will talk about retire healthy, wealthy, and wise, right? So that they're able to have a good retirement. They have the money to do so, and they have the wisdom to say, okay, I'm ready to do that. Where I think we've maybe don't include in this is, what about retirement? What do we really do to help invest in the succession of retirement? And that's a scary thing. I've had a couple just in this organization in the last couple years where they called me and said, I am scared out of my mind. And I have heartfelt sorrow for that, because I don't know that we've done enough to tell them, hey, you did a good job in your career. You deserve this opportunity to retire. What can we do to prepare you for that moment? Because again, right, when they succeed in retirement, what else happens? We hire somebody else. We promote somebody else. And that's that not never ending cycle. And what are we doing to really invest in that and embrace that, so that those people that reach that place in their career can say, I did a good job. I had a great career. I've been successful, and I've been guided into that
Mhm.
readiness for the next step, the next season. Maybe it is a job, maybe not. Maybe they're going to travel like I want to do with my wife. I don't care what that part is, but how are we helping them take a leap off of that diving board into that unknown space successfully so?
Yeah, and I think that's really powerful to hear you talk about because as I'm sitting here reflecting on it, just like in the military, the organization will go on and it will be fine. Right? But if you don't take time to take care of yourself, there are very few people, honestly, that are going to be looking out for you like you can look out for you. And so the saying in the army was, and I wasn't good at this, but it was, don't work up until the last day. Meaning you've got to take some time for your own transition to start thinking about what's next, the next chapter for you. And if you convince yourself that, well, I'm a deputy chief and I'm essential here in the department and things can't run without me. Therefore, I have to put in full days all the way up until the end. Unfortunately, you'll be out and retired, but you'll be looking around and you'll be like, well, now what? Right. And so you have to take time for yourself. And I think you're thinking about that. And it's certainly not a disservice to the organization. If you think more holistically, it's benefiting the organization through succession planning and through doing it right, where people are then set up for the root word of success.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great ending point for us today, Michael, and certainly a powerful sentiment. Thanks for joining me today and your continued leadership, both in Lacey and across the broader fire service. Your journey and willingness to lead with purpose, take risks, develop others are all great examples for all of us. Our loss here in Colorado is Washington's gain. It certainly sounds like, but whenever you're back in town, I would love to catch up with you again. For our listeners, if you found this episode valuable, please share it with your team or anyone who might benefit from these leadership takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe to the Convergent Impact Leadership Podcast and leave a review on your favorite platform. For more leadership resources and tools, visit convergentimpact.com. And as always, until next time, lead well, take care of your people, and keep setting the example.